It was a crisp evening in the city, and the soft glow of streetlights reflected on the restaurant's polished glass doors. People in elegant attire were streaming into La Fontaine, the most exclusive restaurant in town. It was the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance, and patrons prided themselves on being part of the elite few who could afford its extravagant menu. That's when she arrived. She wasn't dressed like the others. Instead of designer gowns and expensive shoes, she wore a simple outfit, clean but unremarkable. Her demeanor was calm, yet there was something about her presence that demanded attention. She held her head high as she approached the maitre d', a clipboard in hand, standing at the entrance like a gatekeeper. "Good evening," she said with a warm smile. "I'd like a table, please." The maitre d' gave her a once-over, his eyebrows arching ever so slightly. Without bothering to check the list, he replied curtly, "Do you have a reservation?" "No," she admitted, her smile unwavering. "But I was hoping you might have an opening." He smirked, a practiced expression that barely hid his disdain. "I'm afraid that's not possible. We're fully booked. And even if we weren't..." He hesitated, letting his gaze linger on her modest attire before finishing with a dismissive tone, "We have a very strict dress code." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "I understand. Thank you." She turned to leave, but not before a couple nearby, who had overheard the exchange, chuckled quietly to themselves. Their laughter stung more than the maître's words. As she stepped away from the entrance, her heart ached. The humiliation wasn't just in the words spoken, it was in the way they looked at her, as if she didn't belong, as if she wasn't worthy. She stood by the curb, pretending to check her phone, but really, she was trying to compose herself. The laughter from the couple still echoed in her ears, and the maître's smirk played on a loop in her mind. Taking a deep breath, she glanced back at the restaurant. The grand chandelier in the lobby sparkled through the glass doors, a stark reminder of the world she'd been shut out of. But instead of dwelling on the pain, she felt something else rise within her. It wasn't anger, it was determination. They saw her as less because of how she looked. They assumed she didn't belong because she wasn't adorned with luxury. But what they didn't know was that beneath her simple exterior was a woman who had built herself from nothing, a woman who had worked tirelessly to create success. She smiled to herself, not out of joy, but out of resolve. They had no idea who they had just turned away. Pulling out her phone, she dialed a number. After a few rings, a warm voice answered on the other end. "Hello, Mr. Carter? It's me. Can you arrange a meeting with the owner of La Fontaine's parent company? I have an interesting proposal I'd like to discuss." Her voice was calm and confident, and as she hung up, she glanced back at the restaurant one last time. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The very next morning, she sat in the plush office of Mr. Carter, her trusted financial advisor. His face showed curiosity as she laid out her idea, a hint of a smile playing on his lips as he listened. "So let me get this straight," he said, leaning forward. "You don't just want a seat at the table, you want to own the whole restaurant chain?" She nodded, her expression unwavering. "Exactly. I don't want to be treated like that again, and I don't want anyone else to experience what I did last night." Mr. Carter chuckled, shaking his head in admiration. "You've always been bold, but this is on another level. I'll make the calls." Over the next few days, meetings were scheduled, numbers were crunched, and negotiations began. The parent company of La Fontaine was hesitant at first, but once they saw her financial portfolio and her vision for expanding the brand, they quickly came around. "I believe La Fontaine could be more than just a symbol of exclusivity," she said during the final meeting. "It could be a place where anyone who values good food and an elegant atmosphere feels welcome, regardless of how they look." Her words resonated, not just because of their logic, but because of the passion behind them. By the end of the meeting, she had done it. The deal was signed, and she was now the proud owner of the La Fontaine franchise. A week later, she found herself standing once again in front of the grand doors of La Fontaine. This time, she wasn't wearing her usual modest outfit. She was dressed elegantly, not to fit in, but because this occasion demanded it. A tailored dress, understated jewelry, and a quiet confidence that could not be ignored. As she walked in, the same maître d' from before greeted her. He didn't recognize her at first, His rehearsed smile appeared as he prepared to deliver his standard greeting. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a—" He paused, his eyes widening slightly as recognition dawned on him. She smiled softly. "I'd like a table, please." His expression shifted from polite to panicked. "Oh, of course, madam. Right this way," he stammered, grabbing a menu and leading her to the finest table in the house. The room was buzzing with conversation, but one by one, heads turned as she passed. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd, though she paid them no mind. She sat gracefully, scanning the menu she had seen a dozen times during her ownership meetings. Moments later, the restaurant manager appeared at her table. It wasn't the maître. He must have sent for backup, realizing the importance of his guest. "Good evening, ma'am," the manager said, his voice warm but cautious. "We're honored to have you here. May I ask your name?" She placed the menu down and looked him directly in the eye. "Of course. My name is Sophia Carter. I believe you'll find it on the paperwork as the new owner of La Fontaine." The manager's face froze in shock, his professional composure cracking for a split second. "The new owner?" he repeated, as if he hadn't heard her correctly. Sophia nodded. "Yes, I recently purchased the franchise. I came by tonight to see how things are running." The murmurs in the restaurant grew louder as people began to piece together what was happening. Meanwhile, the maître stood frozen near the entrance, his face pale as he realized the enormity of his mistake from the previous week. Sophia smiled at him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said lightly. Sophia could see the tension in the room. The manager and maître stood like statues, unsure of how to proceed. The other diners whispered amongst themselves, their curiosity at an all-time high. She leaned back in her chair, her calm demeanor commanding everyone's attention. "Please relax," she said, her voice warm but firm. "I didn't come here to make anyone uncomfortable." The manager quickly nodded, trying to recover. "Of course, Miss Carter. Is there anything we can do to make your evening more enjoyable?" Sophia paused for a moment, then glanced at the maître, who was still rooted to his spot near the door. "Actually, yes. I'd like to speak with your staff before I leave. Could you gather them after the dinner service?" The manager hesitated, then nodded. "Absolutely, ma'am. It will be done." As the evening progressed, Sophia enjoyed her meal, taking mental notes about the service and ambiance. She observed how the staff interacted with guests and how the diners carried themselves. There was an air of exclusivity, but it lacked warmth, a sense of genuine hospitality. When she finished, the staff was quietly assembled in the back of the restaurant. The maître stood at the front, his hands clasped tightly as if bracing for bad news. Sophia addressed them all, her voice steady and kind. "Thank you all for your hard work. I know this restaurant has a reputation for being one of the finest in the city, and that's because of your dedication." She paused, letting her words sink in, before continuing. "But I believe we can do better. This place is known for exclusivity, but true excellence lies in making everyone feel valued. That includes how we treat people who may not fit the mold of our usual guests." Her eyes flickered to the maître, who swallowed hard but didn't look away. She softened her tone. "Last week, I came here dressed simply, and I was turned away. That experience wasn't just about me, it was about anyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. I want to change that." The room was silent. Some staff members exchanged nervous glances, while others nodded slightly, seeming to understand her point. "I'm not here to shame anyone," Sophia added. "I'm here to challenge us all to do better, myself included. From now on, La Fontaine will be a place where every guest, regardless of their appearance, is treated with respect and kindness." The maître finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Miss Carter, I'm deeply sorry for how I treated you. It was wrong, and I've learned a hard lesson." Sophia gave him a small smile. "Apology accepted. Growth starts with recognizing our mistakes. Let's work together to make this place not just exclusive, but extraordinary." After addressing the staff, Sophia returned to the dining area. The atmosphere had shifted. There was a sense of curiosity and even admiration from the diners who had witnessed parts of what had unfolded. One woman, elegantly dressed and seated at a nearby table, caught her attention. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "Are you really the new owner of La Fontaine?" Sophia turned to her with a polite smile. "Yes, I am. As of this week." The woman hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's refreshing to see someone like you, someone who isn't afraid to stand up for what's right, owning a place like this. It gives me hope that things can change. Sophia's smile deepened. Thank you. That means a lot. Change is never easy, but I believe it's worth striving for. As she made her way toward the door, the maitre approached her one last time. He looked nervous but determined. Miss Carter, he said, bowing his head slightly, I just wanted to thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. I'll do my best to ensure this restaurant reflects the values you've spoken about. Sophia nodded. I appreciate that. Remember, kindness doesn't diminish luxury, it enhances it. When she stepped outside into the crisp evening air, she took a moment to reflect. A week ago, she had walked away from this very spot feeling humiliated and small. Tonight, she left with her head held high, knowing she had turned that pain into something meaningful. The experience had reminded her of her own journey. She had come from humble beginnings, working tirelessly to build her success. That success wasn't about the money. It was about the opportunity to create change, to open doors for others. Looking back at the restaurant, she smiled. It wasn't just a business acquisition. It was a statement, a reminder that respect and dignity should never depend on appearances. As she walked to her car, she felt lighter, freer, and more determined than ever. This was only the beginning. Life is full of moments that test us, moments where we can choose to stand up for what's right or walk away. Sophia's story reminds us that dignity, kindness, and respect should never be determined by appearances. Her journey proves that no matter how others perceive us, our strength lies in how we respond. Instead of letting humiliation define her, she used it to create change, ensuring no one else would feel the pain she did. If this story inspired you, remember to spread the message. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who might need a little motivation today. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about how you've overcome challenges or stood up for what's right. Let's keep the conversation going and inspire each other. Together, we can create a world where kindness is always in fashion.